KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider. He joins us now to get some takes, some depth on this draft. I see him tweeting about a lot of the different picks and how they're going to fit. And we'll go over the NFL draft with KC Joyner. As football takes center stage, that means we bring in the football scientist to give us his take on the NFL draft from yesterday and some thoughts coming forward here. KC, welcome back, pal. How you been?
Hey, doing good. It was a very entertaining draft yesterday, wasn't it?
It was. I can't remember one with more fireworks in terms of, I don't think it's ever happened before, where 3 trade-ups for quarterbacks, 3 receivers taken in the top 10. I mean, I don't know that there was ever a more explosive day.
Yeah, it's a change from what they've been doing recently, what teams have been doing recently, where it's been a lot of offensive lines and big guys and defensive players, and a lot of size and mass is what they've been going for the past couple of years. And this draft didn't seem like the kind of draft where you're going to go for a lot of receivers and quarterbacks early, but the skill position and quarterback talent seemed to take the day in a way that it was very unexpected.
Big time. I don't know about you, but the mass majority have a negative feeling towards Mitch Trubisky getting not only taken number 2, but someone trading up the amount they did to go to number 2. Your thoughts on Trubisky in the NFL?
Well, Ernie Accorsi, who's the famed talent evaluator, worked for the Giants, worked for the Browns. He's a really sharp guy, one of the smartest personnel minds in the business. A few years ago, he said that if you think that you have an elite quarterback, a franchise quarterback, if you think you have a chance to get a franchise quarterback, there's no price that's too high to pay. It doesn't matter. You trade your whole draft, there'll be no price that's too high to pay. Now, I don't know that Trubisky is that quarterback, but I can say I did some analysis of him. I got a little different take on him the last time we spoke a few weeks ago. That I did an analysis for him for Insider, and looking over his stats and metrics, you find that he had elite accuracy. He has elite mobility. He's got a really sharp mind. He was 2014 All-Academic, and John Gruden couldn't talk enough about how smart he was, and also his intangibles are off the charts. So he's got a lot of things that you like. And if you're Chicago and you think this guy has a chance of being a true franchise quarterback, yeah, it makes sense to pay that price. We'll see if it worked out, but if they thought that was the case, yeah, it makes sense.
Casey, okay, I agree with that premise. If you get the quarterback, the Eagles did it last year. They moved up. They gave up a lot. They ended up getting their guy. We all seem like we're pretty happy. Don't know where Carson Wentz's career is going to go, but we feel pretty good. Overall, when you watch the quarterbacks, Trubisky, Watson, Mahomes, those 3 guys got picked in the top 12. Who of those 3 did you like the best?
I like Trubisky the best. Mind you, last year, by the middle of last season, I wrote an article for ESPN's Insider section as part of my college football coverage that said that Trubisky made a very strong case that Trubisky was a better quarterback than either Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson, the best quarterback in the ACC, which you wouldn't think he would be. So, and that's only based on 6 or 7 games, and he had some good games down the stretch. So I liked him as a pro talent more. I think if you get Watson in the right system, and I think that O'Brien will run that kind of system, but if you get him in the right system, he can be that good, whereas I think Trubisky you can just put anywhere. I got a lot of questions about Mahomes because I don't know that if he's in the type of offense he played in college, I don't know if that skill set translates over to the NFL. So I got a lot more question marks about him. So if I'm picking a bust out of those 3, I'm picking Mahomes.
KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider here, also covers the college game as well, so obviously his thoughts on a lot of these players in the fits. What about Fournette going number 4 to Jacksonville? We saw Ezekiel go there last year. It worked out for them, so they started the trend. Jacksonville followed and continued the trend, but will it work out as well for them?
Fournette's a great power runner, and he's a one-dimensional kind of player. You're not going to throw the ball a lot. You don't want him. He's not a great pass catcher. He's not a great pass blocker. He's a power back. If that's the kind of offense you want to run and say we want that kind of power offense, then it works. Personally, skill set-wise, I like McCaffrey a whole lot more because you can do about 20 other things with him that you can't do with Fournette. But if the Jaguars said we want a power back who can just wear a defense down, he's going to be the guy who's going to be that for us, and that will help make things better for Blake Bortles. If that's the way they see it, then I like the pick. But I'm not so sure on taking a one-dimensional player that early, especially because Jacksonville ranked 21st last year. My good blocking rate metric measures run blocking effectiveness. So they don't have a great run blocking offensive line like Dallas. So I think they've got the back now, but now you got to get the blocking.
KC, what were your thoughts on the wideouts? I was in the media pavilion up there at the draft and really surprised by those 3 wideouts all going top 10. Were you?
Very surprised, especially surprised by Ross. I love his speed, but he's got durability questions. He's not that big. And I'm thinking he's in the AFC North, and you got Baltimore's defense and you got Pittsburgh's defense are going to go after this guy 4 games a year, a guy who's, you worry about his durability in the first place. I understand speed kills and you got to go for it, so I understand why they did it, but man, he was really the riskier pick. Like Williams, I could see for the Chargers because they want a workhorse wide receiver, and he's a guy who can be their workhorse wide receiver. I'm not so sold on Davis, but they had to give somebody from Mariota what he has now. He's not going to take. He could be a superstar if you surround him with superstar talent. So I got that, but I really didn't get the Ross pick because that kind of receiver against the AFC North, I just don't see it.
How about McCaffrey? Because there was so much hype about him, and his stock rose so high heading into the draft, and all that hype last night. Was he too high?
If looking at what Carolina can do with him and what I think that, because they have the kind of offense that will utilize him to get the most out of his ability. They're not just going to sit him in the backfield and say, okay, you're going to be our tailback and that's it. They will shift him out to wide receiver. They'll get screens to him out there. They'll use him in the way that the Bills used to use Thurman Thomas back in those glory days for them. I think they'll use him in the same way. So he's a great fit for what they need. And also, remember, they're trying to get away from utilizing Cam Newton as much, and they've had backfields that really haven't allowed them to do that. Now you've got this guy who can do it all, so you can say, look, instead of giving Cam, 50 planned rushes a year or whatever it is, you cut him down to 12 or something like that. You cut that back a whole lot because you can do so much more with McCaffrey.
Seems like the game has changed, though, on that philosophy that back in the day it was, the running backs, you got to get a guy that's going to touch the ball 25 times. Nobody gets 25 carries anymore. So McCaffrey going to be able to catch, run, return 20, 25 times a game.
Yeah, I think teams saw Elliott last year and said, oh, wow, you can go with the bell cow back. It does still work, and they're starting to hope they can go back in that direction. I don't know that that's what it is, but I think you take a different kind of pounding if you're going to catch screen passes. If you're going to set McCaffrey out in the slot and you're just going to run some bubbles to him and such, you take a different kind of pounding there. You're getting tackled by a cornerback, maybe a linebacker, but out in space than you do if you're trying to run up the gut and you get off the defensive lineman and you've got, a plugger linebacker sitting you. Take a different kind of pounding. So I think that they said, let's limit what we give him inside the tackles. Not that McCaffrey can't take it, but let's say, okay, we're going to give him 15 carries inside the tackles, maybe 18, something like that, and then we're going to give him more touches towards the outside on running plays to go outside, and then you go into bubble screens and things. I think you could give him 300 touches a year and 350 touches a year and have it affect him in a different way than it would Elliott getting 350 right off the gut.
KC Joyner, ESPN.com, with us here looking back at the draft. Christian McCaffrey was 8. John Ross, we touched on Mahomes. And then we got to Lattimore right there at number 11. And that's where, KC, I'm at the draft last night, and I'm talking to the people around me thinking, wow, Lattimore has fallen out of the top 10. Should Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas been making calls to New Orleans, or was New Orleans going to be dead set on taking Lattimore at that spot?
Oh, they have to improve their defense. They don't have a choice. Their defense is so bad. I don't think I think it would have taken the kind of deal that it took to get Trubisky. I think it would have taken some kind of huge deal to make that happen. I mean, because if you're New Orleans, I mean, he's custom made for what you do. He's got injury concerns and such, but he's custom made for what you do and what you need. And that's a situation where a lot of times you want to, they say you don't draft for need, you take best available player. At that point, it's, best available player happens to fill a gargantuan need on our team. Perfect for New Orleans.
All right, KC Joyner, I want to transition into a little bit more of what Philly did last night. We just talked about Lattimore. They didn't go corner. They went end with Derek Barnett. And Barnett's got the numbers. He's the top sacker at Tennessee. He is basically, all-time sack record there. He also has more sacks than Myles Garrett. He has more than Solomon Thomas. So why was he there at 14? And did you like the Eagles with that need? Obviously, they did need an edge rusher. It wasn't it wasn't like they took best player available because he was just so good. But they needed an end. They got one. It just seems that the reaction here has kind of been not a love, not a hate, just an
Well, as it says, I'm looking at our insider coverage of it and or our ESPN coverage of it, and it says that Barnett's athletic measurables aren't elite. So that's one of the reasons you say, okay, well, maybe he doesn't have some of the combine numbers you're looking for. But I ran some metrics a couple of days before the draft, a few days before draft, and it took some information from Stats LLC, and it's looking at what we call splash plays. Splash plays are quarterback sacks, quarterback hits, hurries, all plays where you're making an impact like that. Of all the players who had 100 or more splash plays last year, I looked at how many snaps they played to get an idea of how often they were making a splash play. Barnett, there were 42 players who had 100 or more splash plays last year. Barnett is fifth in that group on a splash plays per snap basis. Fifth. I mean, he's better than better than T.J. Watt. He's better than Solomon Thomas. He's better than Garrett. I mean, he's right. And he's at the top of the list, and not that far away from the top. So I just think they looked at it and said it isn't just that this guy gets sacks, because a lot of times that's a misleading number. It's he's making impacts on all the time. He's not just getting in and getting a sack. He's getting pressures. He's getting hurries. He's getting hits. He's making impact tackles. He's doing a lot more than just getting a pass rush. They're getting a sack. So he's bringing a true pass rush. And I think for the Eagles, you're saying we have to have this in our division, and a guy who can do it at this caliber is hard to come by. So I really like the pick.
Okay, so there was a lot of impressive production, but there was a lot of concern about how his game would translate to the next level, specifically, I guess, strength-wise and some league. But you seem like you've seen enough to think that, hey, this guy can translate to the NFL. Because one guy he reminded me of, we talked about this earlier, was a guy who played for the Eagles, Darren Howard. Both of them exactly 6'3", 260, similar kind of guys who were both like, Darren Howard was a guy that just didn't jump off the page, but he always had production.
Yeah, and Barnett's doing it in the SEC. I mean, he's doing it against top caliber competition, and you can't always make that. That's not always a differentiator. Sometimes, even if you do it well in your conference, you got a tough conference, it still might not translate well to the NFL. But he was doing it against top tackles. He's doing it against these because the SEC's got top offensive linemen. This is not a conference where that's one place where the conference does very well. So I was convinced enough of what I saw to say he's just going to be a consistent player. Is he going to be an impact guy? I don't know if he's going to be a real impact guy, but I think he's going to be at least somebody who you're going to say a few years down the line, this is somebody who gave us a number of years of quality production. Might he get a couple of double-digit sack seasons? I think so. Is he going to be a 20-sack guy? Probably not, but I mean, if he can get close to double-digit sacks and contribute in a number of other ways, you're getting pass rush pressures, doing some other things like that, I think he'll be somebody who he is going to look back and say, this was a good, maybe very good pick. Maybe not a great pick, a very good pick is what I think it'll come out to be.
KC Joyner with us, talking NFL draft. And KC, by all accounts, Joe Douglas obviously a factor in this draft. Have set the Eagles draft board, the first draft with him with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Mike and I had talked, KC, a lot heading into the draft about how the Eagles tended to go offensive players. But with Joe Douglas there and this kind of a Joe Douglas, Terrell Suggs, that comparison was made kind of guy, then how much of a factor, I mean, does it show to you that maybe that Howie did step back and said, okay, Joe, I'm willing to let you take the lead, like we said we're going to do?
Howie does. Remember, Howie's got a lot of great strengths. He's very good at personnel, but building a roster and making sure that all your players fit into the right slots, that you make sure that you don't overpay for one position so that you can't afford to pay for another position. They're very good at making sure they pay their players the right amount, making sure they get players who have, what does it say about Barnett, though? I'll tell you where you might see Howie there. Barnett's 20 years old. He's a young guy, so he's a little bit younger than other players. So getting extra years out of players, knowing where they are, not paying for older players, I think Howie helps set that role for the team and say, we're going to make sure that these players fit into that part of our scheme. We're going to make sure our team isn't too young and too old, and make sure we're getting players at their peak years. And then maybe somebody else, he lets the reins go to somebody else to say, I'll make some specific decisions about who we draft, but I'll get them within the parameters that you're looking at. If that's the case, that's a great partnership.
Okay, so they take him at 14. Behind them, you've got Marlon Humphrey, you've got Jonathan Allen, Adoree Jackson. O.J. Howard.
Yeah, O.J. Howard.
You got Charles Harris, a name that was another SEC player. Garyon Conley, we know he had problems. But did any of the guys after Barnett stick out at 14 that you thought, Philly's on the board, this is the guy, and then they went Barnett, and you said, okay, I like Barnett, but I like that guy better for them?
Barnett was more productive than Allen, but when you saw the tape they showed last night after Allen got selected, you see, oh, he's playing a 3 technique. Oh, look, he's playing a 5. Hey, he's right over the center. Oh, he's at a 7 technique. They're moving him all up and down the line. Left side, right side, doesn't matter. He could play everywhere, and he's got the size and the strength to play any position that you want him to play. That type of situational, that type of structural ability, what you can do with him, the things that you can have that kind of diversity with him to use him in all those ways. I don't know that you can do that same thing with Barnett. So I liked Allen from that perspective to say that somebody who, hey, guess what? Our 3 tackles hurt. Great. Well, Allen can go there if we have to. Hey, our nose got hurt. We can move Allen in. Somebody else can play 3. You can move him over and play him in so many different ways. And I think at Barnett, you're a little more limited. So from that perspective, I probably would have liked to see the Eagles take Allen more, but I get why they took Barnett from a production standpoint.
You know, Casey, you and I are brothers from another mother, I know, because I felt the same way. When Allen was there, I said the versatility. To me, Jonathan Allen was almost the Christian McCaffrey of the defensive line. I can play him at end. I can play him at tackle if I go 3-4. Because some people pigeonhole him as this 3-4. Now, Charles Harris, a little different. I didn't like him. I thought he was more of just a 3-4 end, more so. And Reuben Foster, I had a little bit of issue with as a 3-4 inside guy, mainly because it kind of messed with Jordan Hicks. But I was seeing the same side as you with Jonathan Allen, that man. He was versatile. Him and Cox next to each other, and then with Jernigan there, I bounce him to the outside, and you can rotate. I mean, he felt like more of a Swiss Army knife impact guy than Barnett did. But hey, they obviously like Barnett a little better. I want to pick your brain on tonight. Joe Mixon, if he's there at 43, what's your take there?
Yeah, talent's there. It's a tough call. It's always, when you're looking at teams making calls of that nature, I was doing an interview earlier today talking to people about it and saying that teams do a lot of this sort of behind-the-scenes stuff. They know things that the public doesn't know. They're able to do due diligence that the rest of the public isn't able to do. We're not able to see. Even the press isn't able to see. They have access to things that people don't know. So they're going to be able to judge these situations in a different way than other people are. And they have to know from a standpoint of, can our team handle these sorts of situations? Can we do this in such a way? Can we structurally handle this in our locker room with our front office? Are we set to do this? Some teams are, some teams aren't. The teams that think they might have an issue with dealing with something like that, you go ahead and pass on the guy. But if you think you've got the ability to handle something like that, then you go ahead and take him. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot about how each team has done their due diligence and what they see from that perspective.
KC Joyner with us as we're talking NFL draft and what the Eagles are going to do tonight. Now, Casey, I do want to find out about some of the corners that are still out there available for the Eagles. Kevin King is out there. Sidney Jones is out there. Quincy Wilson is out there. Of some of those names, is there one of those names that jumps out to you and say, yeah, 43, Eagles, that's a good fit?
If I had to pick out of that bunch, I'm probably going Jones. Because I like what I saw of him on this Pac-12 tape. They do a lot of passing in that conference, and I think that he could be a good player there. But honestly, when I'm looking at these guys and seeing their coverage metrics and things, I'm seeing a lot of similarities between them, and there's certain things that some guys do a little better than others, but I don't think this is going to be a case like we just talk about Allen versus Barnett, where you see a couple guys where one guy is just a fantastic fit and you can do so many things with another guy may not be. I don't think we've got that sort of situation. So I think it's a matter of they could even trade down if they had an opportunity and still probably get somebody who's just as good as another player. So if they had that opportunity afforded to them, yeah, go for it. But honestly, there's like 5 or 6 guys who I think are kind of in the same boat.
All right, Casey Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider is round 2 tonight. Dalvin Cook, another name that Eagle fans, I think, almost would have been happy with if they took last night at 14. That's the funny part. So we'll see. And obviously, so much more work to do in the draft. 2 to 3 rounds, rounds 2 and 3, I should say, tonight, and the rest of the draft on Saturday. Casey Joyner here on Sports Bash, of course, always talking football with us, pal. Take care. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the draft.
You too, guys. Appreciate it.